I'm not going to talk about my company today, but briefly about my company. We're the SMBX, or the Small Medium Business Exchange. What we've done is combined blockchain technology. We're built on a private Ethereum network with the new legal space that was cleared out by the Jobs Act, or especially Title III Regulation CF, to replicate the entire user experience of a public exchange without any of the compliance costs. We're using it to basically create the New York Stock Exchange for small businesses. In the future, small businesses will no longer be taking out loans from a bank. Instead, they'll be issuing bonds on the SMBX. That's all about my company now. So I guess because it's a keynote, I'm supposed to say something informative. So I thought I would try and take a minute and put blockchain technology into historical perspective for you. I've been there since the beginning. I mean, not literally sitting over Satoshi's back, whoever she or he or they were. But I came to blockchain technology early, so I've had the luxury of seeing it evolve over time. And being based in Silicon Valley, I've had my ear close to the ground on it. What I want to do basically today is just basically pose one simple question, which is, what does third generation blockchain technology hold for us? We've moved through first generation blockchain technology. I'll define what that is in just a minute. We are, I believe, entering into the beginning of the end of second generation blockchain technology, and I'll define what that is thereafter. So what does third generation blockchain technology hold for us? And that's what I'll be talking about for the next 7 or 8 minutes. My first experience with blockchain was as a professor of finance at UC Santa Cruz. I was building a fintech research program at UC Santa Cruz, and we were studying like early applications of automation and machine learning to underwriting, advances in APIs, all this stuff. The student walked in, undergrad of course, walked into my office and sat down in about 2010, early 2010, and wanted to talk to me about the Bitcoin. Said, you gotta hear about the Bitcoin, it's this incredible technology. And he explained it as any smart UC undergrad would for a few minutes. And I was a stupid young college professor, and after a minute of talking to him, I said, let's do an independent study on it. And he said, great, all I have to do now is march up to Econ Hill, talk to the chair of the Econ department, who will sign off on it, and we'll do an independent study of Bitcoin. And he got up to Econ Hill, and the chair of the econ department at UC Santa Cruz said, that's bullshit, it's a Ponzi scheme, it'll never work, and I'm not gonna sign off on it. So I never actually did the independent study with the student, although I see him periodically, but it did put Bitcoin on my radar. I bought a couple Bitcoin and was off to the races. There was a few things that marked early blockchain technology, what we now would call first generation blockchain technology. And it was a series of very profound realizations that I think were historically unique. One of the things that really inspired me about blockchain technology. Namely that in 2008, as Helicopter Ben, the former chair of the Federal Reserve, was dropping money out of a helicopter to try and jumpstart the corpse that was the US economy after the 2008 financial crisis, this concept of money and value being social. Bitcoin has no value, then it has no value, then it has no value, then someone buys a pizza with it and it has some value, then someone buys an Expedia plane ticket with it and now it has value. This is one of the profound realizations of blockchain technology, cryptocurrency in particular, that if we all agree that something has value, it will. And if we all agree that it doesn't have value, it won't. And now, for the first time in history, the state, which historically has had a monopoly on violence, a monopoly on, it's a different course that I teach, has historically had, which is true as well, right? Historically had a monopoly on the creation and the distribution and the circulation of money, no longer does. Now a punk kid with a few lines of code can create their own currency and issue it, and we all agree that it has money, therefore it will. Secondly is the idea that raising capital can become more decentralized, more democratic. It's good to see Daniel remembering old Mastercoin, because that was a really interesting example of a crowdfunding offering on the new distributed technology. At that time it was Bitcoin. Thirdly, the concept that financial transactions could truly become peer-to-peer. If you know anything about finance, you know that somebody all day, every day is vacuuming up nickels along the chain of transactions, whether it's at ACH level or whatever it is. The wager for these early kids who were doing blockchain technology, who were interested in it, was that a new, better, and more transparent financial system was made possible. So this is the beginning of blockchain technology. It's first generation blockchain technology, which roughly is about 2009, 2010 to 2015. I label this image a picture of a bunch of punk kids eating pizza and drinking beer at Bitcoin and Ethereum meetups. This is actually an Ethereum meetup. If you don't recognize this room, and you're based in the Bay Area, chances are you weren't part of first generation blockchain technology. Does anybody recognize this room? Yes. Indeed, Hacker Dojo, yeah. There are some people who are drinking beer and eating pizza at Hacker Dojo in Palo Alto. One night, I was sitting at Galvanize in San Francisco at Ethereum meetup, and there was a young developer there who was thinking that he was teaching us about how you did futures contracts on the Ethereum blockchain. He actually was showing us how to do swaps, but it doesn't matter. The point is, he was talking about how you use traditional financial legacy assets to fuse with blockchain technology to create a more decentralized, lower transaction cost basis technological infrastructure. At first, it was just kids with hoodies. Eventually, all of a sudden, a few business suits start lining up in the back and handing us their business cards. These people are from UBS, Swiss Re, and so on. You know what it is here. It's the beginning of second generation blockchain technology when Wall Street enters into the room. And you can see this reflected in the type of investments that are made over time by traditional financial institutions who understood it was possible to actually reduce transaction costs, eliminate back-end system fragmentation, and therefore do more legacy finance faster, better, cheaper. Although second generation blockchain technology actually moves in, there's really two tiers to it, or there's two different ways in which it moves. One is Wall Street, right? Legacy finance, absorbing digital ledger technology, whether through R3 or whatever, to use smart contracts and other blockchain-based technologies to lower transaction costs. Keep in mind that after 2008, regulatory changes were actually hurting banks' bottom line, not to mention that 2008 had happened and they were still recovering from it. So it's very compelling, seductive even, this notion that you could use distributed ledger technology to reduce your transaction costs, do more legacy finance faster, better, cheaper. Of course, and that's still going on right now, right? But of course, the thing that a lot of us are interested in right now, and maybe some of us came to blockchain on this terms, was through the ICO craze that happened last year. I have right here a picture that I would call Dr. Jekyll, and this is a picture that I would call Mr. Hyde. Dr. Jekyll started out, right, trying to do democratic finance. All he wanted to do was create a cure. I don't actually know the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I'm not a good reader. But Dr. Jekyll was actually trying to create a cure for a problem, right? Solve a pain point. But somehow Mr. Hyde came out at certain times of the night, right? You all understand that we live today in an ICO era that is marked by Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, right? Dr. Jekyll, who is a responsible trader and holds a diversified portfolio of assets, is super bullish on cryptocurrency, as you should be, because there's no turning back the clock on that. And yet it's the Wild West. And so the kind of person who would respond to this, fast earning, instant PayPal, Paisa, crypto, and payments daily, money, 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 money. This is the Mr. Hyde, and this is where we're at right now. So my question to you, now that I've framed it, is this. Are there only these two options today? Is there only the option, as we're getting to the beginning of the end of second generation blockchain technology, and we think about what the future will look like once it's the present? Are we only faced with the option of choosing between legacy finance's use of blockchain to further legacy finance, or this sort of roaring 20s-like fast money, write a quick white paper so you can hurry up and raise $20 million before the regulatory bubble fully pops, or the regulatory window on it officially closes? Maybe it already has. What does third generation blockchain technology look like? Ready for the answer? I don't know. I don't know what third generation blockchain technology looks like. However, I think we can begin by doing an inventory of blockchain technology itself when we're thinking about the new business models that we'll use to make use of this very powerful Ferrari of a decentralized technology. Number one, those of us who have our hands in the mud and have actually built things with blockchain technology, whether it's a private Ethereum or whether it's something on Stellar or whatever it is, you know that blockchain is really good at doing some things, but it's not good at doing other things. So third generation blockchain technology very may well not just be fundamentally blockchain-based stacks, but it will be this kind of elegant customized, bespoke hybrid of traditional back-end technology to do heavy lifting when the heavy lifting is necessary, but blockchain to do what it's really good at, which is recording IDs, being transparent, providing immutability, providing a superior auditability, and providing cost-effective settlement. Secondly, the smart contracts are extremely interesting. How so? Well, first of all, self-executing transactions by decentralized riders is one of the fundamental solutions of blockchain. A lot of people like to poo-poo on blockchain once they get their blockchain sea legs under them, say, oh, a lot of blockchain projects are just solutions in search of a problem. Yeah, that's true, like blockchain for Uber, or blockchain, plus some, iHeartRadio or whatever. Maybe there are some bad use cases for it. Maybe there's some good use cases for it. I don't know. I'm not so worried about that as I am recognizing that smart contracts are a fundamentally powerful technology. They provide finality, transparency, immutability, superior auditability, and more importantly, it substitutes the rule of man for now the rule of math. And that is a less corruptible, more transparent technology. So I don't actually know what the third generation blockchain technology will look like, but I am interested in thinking through I am interested in thinking through with you what third generation blockchain technology holds for us by beginning by producing an inventory of what blockchain actually does, and maybe even returning to, for those of you who are living that moment, first generation blockchain technology, when it was just a protein organism that was there, was not yet a fully developed and flexible set of things, to find out what more is latent in that early technology that we can make use of, but doesn't exist in reality today. My name is Ben. I'm the CEO of the SMBX, and I'd be happy to chat with any of you later on, or now if we have a few minutes. Thanks. If I had to guess, I would say it would look a lot more pragmatic and practical and less ideological. Like, I would pose the question back to you, is decentralization an ideology, or is it a virtue in certain instances, right? I like decentralization to a certain degree. That's where you have dynamic evolution occurring and so on. But it also causes death in the Wild Wild West and causes Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde to actually come out. So if I thought concretely now, third generation blockchain technology would have a lot more private blockchain use cases. Keep in mind that these days you can have integration between public Ethereum and private Ethereum. Public Ethereum is slow and there's some problems, right? If you're in the financial regulatory space, you cannot allow ISIS to set up a node, right? If you do, then you can be trying to solve your customers' problems who don't have a problem of more centralization or less decentralization. They may have a problem of more transparency or less transparency, corruptibility versus incorruptibility, but they don't have a problem of centralization versus decentralization, right? They have a problem of, I have my problem that needs to be solved, and you can't solve your business's problem if you're getting hung up with regulations. So that's one thing that I would think third generation blockchain technology would look like, a lot more mature and pragmatic about the way that it goes about doing its business, building its business models. For instance, we ring-fenced a private Ethereum network because we saw that as one way of solving the problem for our customers. My customers don't have the problem. A small business, for instance, doesn't have a problem of I need decentralization or whatever, I need blockchain, I need smart contracts. They don't have that problem. A small business needs to raise capital so they can go back to the business of building their small business. Retail investors who have an aversion to legacy finance but investable wealth have a problem. Where do I invest my money? Do I piss it away on Kickstarter? Right? Buy my friend's, trade my friend, trade a crappy t-shirt that I get from my friend for supporting his film or whatever. What do I do with my money, right? How do I support local businesses and so on? Those are problems that people have. So I would say private blockchain networks fused with traditional back-end technology to solve people's problems with solid business models is what third generation blockchain technology, I hope, will look like.
So in that conversation, I wonder, there seems to be a lot of thought around a lot of thought whether investment should be at the infrastructure level, the protocol level, the app level, and I wonder if you have a thought on, in that pragmatic world, where you think the investment should be made in that stack.
So it probably should be made at all three levels because blockchain is still in its infancy and the technologies, while evolving fast, maybe not as fast as it was before everybody was dumping their money into the application level through ICOs, right? Now the early players got there, like you think of Chain, the artist formerly known as Eris, which is now Monax, right? And they were thinking that you were basically going to do the cloud services model, but all over again now with blockchain infrastructure. I'm not sure that's the case. In my opinion, most of those infrastructure plays at the end of the day are going to look like a lot like consulting firms, which I don't know if I'm a venture capitalist, if I'm trying to get a huge valuation gain pop, a consulting firm is a really solid business, but probably not worthy of venture capital, however it's raised. So that's my thoughts on it.
One last question.
So you talked a little bit about, I'll ask my question up front and then I'll elaborate. At what point does the mainstream understanding the vocabulary of blockchain become part of blockchain 3.0 or 4.0? And the reason I ask that is because in the beginning you sort of presented the picture of the cypherpunks, right? And that's a really, really tight-knit group. Understand sort of like the preliminary vocabulary, right? Blockchain 2.0 is the suits, but still somewhat sophisticated, have the vocabulary and understanding of financial markets. At which point does sort of mom and pops and me explaining it to my grandma no longer become a thing where grandmothers and lay people understand exactly what blockchain is, become part of 3.0 or 4.0? Can you talk a little bit about how you think that fits in?
Good question. So I have two thoughts on that. One is, I think that a really interesting design challenge, which has not even begun to be tackled by anybody that I know, now we're talking about hiring a UX or UI designer, would be to design the experience of decentralization. With that being said, at the end of the day, let me pose the question back to you. How many people who are moms and pops and grandmas and grandpas need to know about TCP/IP when they send an email? Nobody. Right? So it's not really necessary. The answer is they never should be, right? That's not their problem anyways. Like if you're in finance, like the regulatory burdens you have, the technological problems you have, all the linguistic specificities of technology, that's not people's problem, right? Their problem is what you're solving. That's why you're in business. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Benjamin.